Sonic 06 is my second favorite Sonic game and third favorite game of all time. And people always ask me why, so I've decided to do a video on this. And since I'll eventually do a top 10 Sonic games video as well, and Sonic 06 will most likely be at number 2, this video should help to explain my reasoning in detail. Now, fair warning, this is not a review, as I'm kind of against doing reviews, because reviews always try to be objective, but you can't really be fully objective. Nerdword tweeted something once. He said, "Never let anyone tell you whether something is objectively good or bad. The quality of any piece of art or media is entirely subjective." And even I tweeted at one point, there's no objective best game ever. Objective criteria is inherently subjective. We all want different things in games. We all want different things in Sonic games, and that's okay. I tend to be in the minority when it comes to my opinions, and that's okay. For example, a lot of people see Sonic Heroes stage length as a con. They say that some of the stages are way too long, and because of that, the game isn't as good as some other Sonic games like maybe Generations. But I prefer the longer stage length, and I frequently criticize Generations for having stages that are too short. And that's okay. I know some people hate Sonic 06, or a lot of people hate Sonic 06. And they'll teach their kids and their kids' kids to hate Sonic 06. And that's okay. I've seen a lot of the big reviews of 06, and it's great that people can share their honest opinions about a game, but realizing I still loved 06 even after seeing reviews such as Clement's taught me something very important. You have to form your own opinions. You see, Clement played 06, I think he even 100%ed it, I'm not sure. But either way, he played the game. So you know that his thoughts are genuinely based off his experiences. That's great. Same with some Call Me Johnny. But what about the people who blindly hate a game that they never played? ProJared's experience of Sonic Adventure 2 may not exactly be your own experience, or it may be very similar to your own experience. And that's okay. I know reviews are supposed to give you an idea of what a game is like, but you have to understand that it's never the same as playing a game for yourself. Although these days people seem to think it is. They just watch a review or a let's play or something and act as if they've played a game, and they'll be the first ones on the forums debating about a game that they've only seen footage of. Anyway, I'm rambling, that topic's for another video. Let's get into the reasons why I love Sonic 06. Now, there's about 4 things that make up every Sonic game: levels, bosses, story, and playable characters. And there's a 5th one that applies to some games like 06 and SA1, which is Hub World. So about 5 things that make up Sonic 06. I'm going to describe these in detail with regards to 06 and explain why I like them. So let's kick it off with levels. To put it bluntly, I love the levels in 06. The graphics were ahead of its time, especially even for a Sonic game, like for a game in general. Like, it came out in 2006, and those graphics still hold up pretty well today. Like, if you saw the Sonic 06 PC remake that used the exact same textures, and I played that in 4K on my channel, like, you should go and check that out. The graphics looked really great, still one of the best looking Sonic games. And the whole art style is going for something a bit more real, like aside from the more colorful look of maybe Heroes or Sonic Colors or something like that. But it worked really well for this game. But most importantly, the reason why I love the stages is because of the level design. I just feel like 06 had the kind of level design I wanted in a Sonic game. Now, there's a YouTuber called Nikon Aquamagna, and he said what makes good level design in a Sonic game is a balance of 3 things: speed, platforming, and exploration. So I'm kind of taking that and I'm adding something else to it, which is combat. So you got speed, platforming, exploration, and combat spec. Everyone wants a mix of these things, but some people want more of one thing and less of other things. For example, if you really wanted high speed, medium level platforming, medium level exploration, and low combat, then you'd love Generations. If you like medium speed, high platforming, high exploration, and high combat, then you might just like 06. You might like different variations, or you might just like only one, but each Sonic game kind of plays with the levels of these 4 things, and that's how you get the level design. And I think this game did a pretty good job of that, especially if you look at Sonic and Silver's stories, because I feel like Shadow's story was a bit heavy on the combat, and it would have been fine if he had better abilities like for attacking enemies, but I feel like the combat was a bit overdone in Shadow's story. But Sonic's story and Silver's story had the combat on point. All 3 stories had great exploration. There were multiple paths to take, different shortcuts if you looked hard enough. They all had a nice amount of platforming, and most importantly, they weren't too fast. You had a good pace for Sonic. He wasn't overly boosting all over the place, and he wasn't too slow. You never felt like you were gonna fall off a platform because you were going too fast or something. And then they had the occasional marked speed section to bring up the speed for a little while. And I like that balance that they had. Stages like Flame Core, Kingdom Valley, Radical Train, Tropical Jungle, and White Acropolis are just some of the examples of stages that I really love in this game. Shadow's Crisis City is probably one of my favorite Shadow stages. And oh my god, Silver's Kingdom Valley is just, that is how you do exploration and platforming, just seriously. And the fact that this game even had a hard mode, just for those people who wanted a bit more challenge. And then on top of that, they had DLC. If you didn't know, this game had DLC. They had a separate very hard mode DLC. So there's like 3 different ways to play every single stage. I'm not talking about Sonic Shadow Silver 3 different ways. I mean regular mode, hard mode, very hard for Sonic, then go to Shadow, and then you got regular mode, hard mode, and very hard mode. Same thing for Silver. So essentially 9 ways to play every single stage. There's 9 flame cores if you have the DLC. So a lot of content there. And there are some things in the level design that aren't perfect. For example, there's some places in Flame Core where it feels like the game just flings you into hot lava. And the scripting, like sometimes there's just too much scripting. I mean, every Sonic game has scripting, even the classics. But this game sometimes just went overboard. Like there's a 15-second scripted section in Crisis City and it looks really great. Like it's cinematic and shit, don't get it twisted, but it's 15 seconds of not pressing anything. And there's several other almost as long scripted sections in that stage. Crisis City is probably the epitome of scripting in a Sonic game, or except for Lost World, or that one on another level as well, but you know, there's a few other little things, but overall, I would say the level design is on point. And the music, and I know I'm saying this under levels, but it kind of applies to the whole game. Everyone knows that 06 has great music, so I don't have to spend too much time on this. Personally, it's my favorite Sonic soundtrack of all time. 06's music is just stellar. Like, we don't even have to dwell on that one. We all know this one, come on. Alright, let's get into bosses. Overall, I thought like the game had decent bosses for the most part. A lot of people complained about Silver's boss fight in Sonic Story when you face off against Silver, but these are the same people that complained that the character battles in SA1 or SA2 were too easy. But now that they made them a bit more challenging, they're complaining. And even still, Silver's boss is easy. It takes like 40 seconds. You literally, all you have to do is wait for him to say how about this, and then you hit him, and then you run away and rinse and repeat. Solaris was kind of meh. It wasn't as amazing as say Metal Sonic in Heroes, but whatever. And the Iblis fight in Sonic Story was admittedly pretty annoying. I didn't like that boss at all. Now that I know how to speedrun it, it's actually a lot more tolerable, but still that boss is kind of I love playing Egg Wyvern. Egg Cerberus is fun. I'd say my favorite boss is probably Egg Genesis. I don't know, something about that boss is just really fun. And Silver had some fun bosses with Iblis, and Shadow's fights against Mephiles were fun as well, because Mephiles is always taunting Shadow. So overall, I like the bosses in this game. Now let's get into the third thing, story. Now I know a lot of people are gonna say, but I actually kind of like the story. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not really someone who falls in love with game stories. Like, I think story is very important to a game, but when you compare the story of like a video game to like a movie or even a TV show, I just feel like game stories usually don't live up. Maybe because of the non-CGI cutscenes, but when it comes to video game stories, they just don't feel like they're on the same level as TV shows or movies. So I kind of go in expecting something and it's not gonna blow me away either way, because usually you have great CGI at the beginning and the end, kind of like Unleashed, and then it's like the middle parts are just regular cutscenes or whatever, and it's just like, okay, cool. But that being said, I found the cutscenes to be mostly good. It was rewatchable. Like, if I had to watch the cutscenes of a Sonic game from start to finish and I had to pick a Sonic game, I'd pick 06. The voice acting was pretty decent. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but honestly, Jason delivered a nice performance. Amy Pallant, Mike Pollock, you know, it was good. And people are gonna complain about Elise, of course. I never hated Elise at all. I never understood the hate for her. Like, of course the kiss was, we don't want to talk about that, but if you watch the cutscene, it happened for less than a second and it's at the end of the story, but people act like it's the whole story. It may have been the lowest point of the story, but it wasn't the whole story. Overall, I like the cutscenes in this game. I still wish they kept some of the banter, because I feel like this game lost that playful banter that Sonic and the other characters had, like in SA1 or SA2. Like, you remember when Sonic runs into Eggman in space in SA2 and he's like, you turn into a big time villain, Doctor. Like, stuff like that. Like, that kind of banter I feel was lost in this game because they're trying to be a bit too serious. That's one thing I did wish they had in this story, but overall, I liked the cutscenes. I could rewatch them. The story was nice and deep. It had a lot of characters in it, and even though there was a lot of plot holes, it's a game story. I don't take it too seriously, honestly. Plus, it's not like it's the only Sonic story with flaws. Like, SA1's cutscenes are dated, and I love SA1. SA2's cutscenes had horrible sound mixing. The animations for both those games were SA2's animations were slightly better, but still. Heroes' story was basically non-existent until the end, and I love Heroes, it's my favorite game ever. Unleashed story was great, especially the beginning and the end, but all the middle cutscenes were still good, but without a lot of other characters, I kind of missed the other characters, so. And everything from Colors onwards just butchered his personality, so we're not even going to talk about that. So Sonic stories were never really perfect. Let's talk about the next thing, which is playable characters. This is something that is very important to me. Favorite Sonic games include Heroes, 06, SA1. Playable characters are important to me. And if you didn't actually know, Sonic Heroes actually won a Guinness World Record for having the most playable characters in a platform game, and that's my favorite game ever. So having different characters with different abilities is what makes Sonic games have more depth, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to just play as one character the whole time, the same jump and homing attack or the same boost if it's generations. Like, you want different abilities. Well, I want them. You might not want them. I don't know. In terms of control, like, the characters in this game controlled fine for me, for the most part. A lot of people said 06's controls were too sensitive. I just kind of got used to it. Like, it is kind of sensitive. I'm not gonna lie. Like, comparing it to Heroes, it is a lot sensitive, but I just got used to it and it was fine. One thing that really made this game stand out is the gems. You know, Sonic got the gems, the iconic gems that just made him so OP. Like, we all know the favorites, the Sky Gem and the Purple Gem and the Red Gem. I'm not gonna go into detail about what the gems do, but they can be used to do crazy shit, and in a way it kind of makes up for the very mediocre spin dash, because spin dash is kind of useless. You can barely spin dash jump. I think speedrunners have a way of doing it, but the spin dash pales in comparison to SA1 spin dash, which is the best spin dash. Another minor thing is that you can't jump directly into enemies to hurt them. Like in other Sonic games like SA2 or SA1, if you're curled up in a ball and you land on an enemy without homing attacking, it will hurt the enemy. But in this game, you just get hit. You have to either home and attack or use the bounce bracelet, and it's a very small thing because most of the time you're just going to use the home and attack or the bounce bracelet, but it's one of those little things that still should have been done anyway. The Mark speed sections were really fun. I do think you should have been able to control the direction of your jumps. I don't know if that was intentional or it was kind of a we rushed the game kind of thing, but they could have made it such that you can direct the jumps. A lot of people hate the Elise carrying levels. I never hated those. It was kind of a nice twist of things. Tails controlled fine, but once again, they should have had a gauge so you could see when your flight runs out, like in Heroes. And the dummy ring bones could have been another color, just so it was easier to see what you were doing. I don't know. It would have also been nice if Tails' attacks had a stronger range. Like, I'm not saying they have to be as great as level 3 Thundershoot, but the bombs could have hit a wider range to make it a little bit easier to attack. His on the ground speed was abysmal, so that should have been faster. And they actually fixed it in the Team Attack Amigo DLC, which is weird. So if you play the DLC, Tails is actually a lot faster and it's a lot better. But then if you go back to the regular stages, he goes back to his regular slow speed. So they fixed it for the DLC and then left it the same way it was for the original stages. Kind of weird. But overall, the characters are mostly fun to play as. Sonic, Shadow, and Silver, the main three, they were all fun to play as. Silver was a bit on the slow side. There was supposed to be an upgrade that made him faster, but the game was rushed, so that didn't happen. But apart from that, the character speed was great. Most of the Amigos were fun as well, with the exception of Amy, but we'll get into that later. And I really do like the way the game handled the Amigos. Like, you have 3 main characters and then 6 characters that you occasionally play as part of certain stages, and occasionally they get staged to themselves. It's like a way of saying these are the main people and then the rest are just kind of there because we know you want to play as them, but they can't take up the whole game. Instead of like SA1 giving every character their own little story, and it's like Amy's got a story but she's only got 3 stages. I like the way they handled it here. It's not quite like Heroes where you're always switching, but it's a good compromise. And while we're talking about the characters, I just want to say that this game probably had my favorite character models of any Sonic game, especially for Sonic. I don't know, something about these models just made me take the characters more seriously, as opposed to their more cartoony models in like Generations, for example. Now let's get into the last thing, which is the hub world. This is something that's in not every Sonic game, but some Sonic games. I don't know, I feel like Soleanna was just this big empty place, and it was kind of chill to be in there because of the music, but at the same time it was just kind of like, I'm not saying that it should have been removed from the game, I'm just saying either there should have been more to do, and I guess there was a lot of things to do because you had the town missions, which some of them were actually pretty fun, some were kind of annoying, but most of them were optional, so it's whatever. But there should have been like a proper map to use that hub world. Like, the map was not good enough. There should have been a proper map. Like, if you play like Assassin's Creed, they've got really good maps in there and you can pinpoint exactly where you want to go and it will direct you there, and then it will show on the mini map. So you should have a mini map and a regular map, but it's not too big a deal, but it's something that affects the enjoyment of the hub world. Like, if you look at Sonic Adventure Adventures hub worlds, they're a lot smaller, but they're a lot more iconic because there's noticeable things that just stand out. You have the casino, you have the train station, you have the beach area, inside the hotel, you have Twinkle Park, you know, that place is bright, you know, the Mystic Ruins, and you have the jungle, and you have the egg carrier shit. It's just a lot more memorable, whereas the 06 hub worlds are a lot more forgettable. Like Soliana just all looks the same, and I could get lost in there for like 10 minutes trying to find the shop to do upgrades, like, and I've played this game a lot. But yeah, man, I've just said pretty much a lot of things that describe why I like this game. Now, you obviously will not agree with all of them, but it's my opinion. Don't get it twisted, there are things that I don't like about Sonic 06. I would say, in my opinion, there's about 3 major issues with the game and a bunch of minor issues. So let's get into the 3 major issues. The first major issue is the load times, especially with the town missions. I have to emphasize that because when you're replaying stages, the load times are not too bad, at least in my opinion, but the town missions, like, there's no excuse for that. Load times will probably be my second biggest issue out of the 3 major issues, but because of the town missions, it's kind of in a tie for first place. The other thing that's in a tie is the slowdown and lag. Now, it's more of slowdown than lag because they're 2 different things. Slowdown is the frame rate not being able to keep up, so the game slows down, and I had the PS3 port of 06, so I had a lot more of this than people that had the 360 port, and this is probably the most annoying thing for me. Once the game is loaded, it's loaded, but if you're playing the game and it's slowing down, that can be a bit of a nuisance, honestly. Lag is kind of like when the game isn't responding. Like, Gens has insane input lag. Like, look at this video. Like, have you ever been playing Gens and you're trying to do some platforming at the exact moment, and because of the input lag, it doesn't register the jump, or maybe there's a frame rate dip in Generations, and because of that, it doesn't register your control, so you miss a jump and then you fall or something. That happens to me in Generations all the time. It's never happened to me in other Sonic games. So I'm just saying that people love to hate on 06's issues, but when it comes to other Sonic games, no one says anything. And I've got a powerful PC, I can run Gens at 4K, so I'm telling you, this thing still happens to me. Anyway, let's move on to the third major issue, the glitches. Now, obviously, we know this game has got a lot of glitches, it was rushed, but let's not pretend it's the only Sonic game with glitches or the only game with glitches. Admittedly, it has more glitches than the average Sonic game, but the game is not unplayable. If you beat the game and you 100% the game, it's not unplayable. Like, unplayable is like, I did a live stream a while back where I played 06 emulated from an Xbox 360 emulator on PC, and I streamed me playing it for the first time, and the emulator is far from ready. Like, it looks weird, the graphics are a bit messed up. One of the things that made it impossible to play, like genuinely unplayable, is that if you hit a spring or you did a light speed dash, the game would just crash and kill you and then respawn at the checkpoint. Oh god. Okay. Oh, please don't kill me. And maybe if you had the gems, you could avoid hitting the springs or avoid doing some light speed dashes, but how are you going to get those in the first place if you don't make it far in the story? I had to download a save file just to play the stages. That is unplayable. 06 is not unplayable, and most of the glitches aren't even game breaking. Game breaking being a glitch that unfairly kills you. There are some areas where occasionally the game will kill you. The infamous one being, if you go in the right side of the loop-de-loop at the end of Wave Ocean Mark Speed section, then you'll die. A lot of the glitches in this game are very consistent, and I guess after you've played the game enough, you know how to avoid them. And obviously it's not the responsibility of the player to learn the glitches and avoid them. The developers should make sure the game isn't glitchy to begin with. But at the end of the day, if I love playing the stages, I can put up with this. This is why it's the lowest of my 3 major issues. But I'm not gonna lose my shit over those other glitches that are just signs of a lack of polish that don't really affect the core gameplay. Like, I'm not gonna lose my shit over Sonic rocking on an uneven platform. Like, it shouldn't be there in a AAA game, but oh well. But yeah, they're still there and I have to bring it up. But I guess it bothers a lot of other people way more than it bothers me. And for the record, could we just mention how Silver Story barely has any glitches? Silver Story was actually pretty polished. And I know that's hard for people to admit because it's 06, but I've never encountered a glitch in Silver Story, and that's the truth, and I've played this game a lot. Alright, now let's get into the minor issues. I actually already mentioned some minor issues in earlier parts of the video, so these are basically the ones that are left. First one I'm going to mention is Shadow's vehicles. I hated literally every single vehicle that Shadow had in this game. So why is it a minor issue? It's minor because you can avoid using like 80% of them. So it's like, oh, they put me in a truck, oh, I'll just leave the truck and play as Shadow. So that's why it's a minor issue. If it was a lot more forced, maybe it would be a major issue, but as it stands, it's a minor issue. They had poor control. It seemed like the levels weren't designed with the vehicles in mind. It felt more like an afterthought, and they just weren't fun. And I'm not against the idea of vehicles. I feel like the game Shadow the Hedgehog did the vehicles slightly better, but I haven't played the game in a while, so I can't say for sure. Maybe you guys can bring it up. What do you think of the vehicles in Shadow the Hedgehog the game and in 06? The next minor issue would be Sonic's board sections. Now, the board physics were horrendous. I think White Acropolis' one was a bit worse than Crisis City. I'm used to it now because I played the game a lot, so it's whatever, but it's a minor issue because they're infrequent. Even though they were not the best, there were only 2 of these board sections in the whole Sonic story. Third minor issue is not liking Amy's gameplay at all. Now, don't get me wrong, but Amy's gameplay was some of my favorite gameplay in SA1, but in 06, she was slow, her attacks were weak, it was a mess. The worst playable character in 06. The only playable character that I didn't like at all. It's a minor issue because you rarely play as Amy. She's just an amigo character, she's not a main character. Anyway, on to the next minor issue. Silver's Dusty Desert. I don't know, Silver's Dusty Desert overall is just filled with too many puzzles and of course a lot of playing as Amy, so you can see why Dusty Desert is one of my least favorite stages in 06. Of course it's a minor issue because Dusty Desert is still one stage in the whole game. Another minor issue would be Knuckles and Omega's mediocre attacks. If you look at Heroes, they had amazing attacks, especially once they hit 3 level ups. And then you go to 06 and I feel like the power characters are weaker than the speed characters. Apart from that, they were fun to control. And I wasn't too bothered about the attacks because we barely play as them. Although if you play the Team Attack Amigo DLC with Omega, you'll start to feel the pain of the attacks. But with Knuckles, you play as him in Flame Core and all you have to do is hit the lights and go. You don't even have to hit the enemies. And then you play as Knuckles in Aquatic Base and you can just hit those little lava lamp looking things and the enemies will just die. So you can kind of get by on those mediocre attacks. Another minor issue would be Rouge sticking to the walls. That technically falls under glitches, so I don't know if I have to mention it here, but I felt like it deserved to be mentioned separately. It's a minor issue because it only seems to happen mainly in Kingdom Valley with Rouge, so it's a small part of the game. And I guess the last minor issue would be the kiss, but we've already mentioned that. It lasted like a second, it still didn't need to be there. She could have just like put her hands on Sonic's chest or something simple like that. It's kind of funny how Sonic has gotten more action from a princess in one game than Mario's gotten in his whole career. But yeah. There's a few other minor issues that I haven't mentioned, but they're even less relevant than the ones I've mentioned, so we're leaving them out. But yeah, man, that's all I have to say about Sonic 06. If I was to give this game like a numerical rating, I'd probably give it like a solid 8 or 8.5 or something out of 10. That might sound outrageous to you, but it's my opinion. All of the issues that I mentioned, from the major issues to the minor issues, wouldn't be enough to knock off more than 2 points out of 10 for me. If those issues bother you a lot more, that's fine, but I loved playing the game ever since my first playthrough back in like 2007. And to be perfectly fair, if Colors or SA2 or Generations had the same kind of issues that I mentioned for 06, then I probably wouldn't be able to like those games. But because 06 is kind of the closest thing to my ideal Sonic game, I'm able to put up with them. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this video, but try to remember it's just my opinion. And either way, I've already been called some pretty terrible things for liking Sonic 06. But I'm pretty thick-skinned, so if you want to add more hate to that, then you can waste time doing that. Because it's not my time. It's yours.